Welcome to the FF Forge. My name is Steve, and in this episode, we will just be covering a few quick things and the injuries from the main slate of games today. The noon games, the 3 o'clock games, hour or 2 hours difference depending on where you live. There were not a lot of injuries to start out with today, except for one team. Guess what team that was? And other than that, there's also not a whole lot of storylines to cover. A lot of things kind of went as expected, at least in terms of fantasy. There are going to be a few surprises in here, but I also have pulled pork that is very close to like 200 degrees, which is where we want it. So I'm trying to film this before my alarm goes off to check on that. So let's see how I do. Probably won't make it. Let's just start off at the top here with the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Atlanta... I almost said the Atlanta Braves versus the Atlanta Falcons. The Chargers pretty much hung on in this one to beat Atlanta 20-17. Kind of struggled in this a little bit more than you would have expected. Did not think that they would be the potent offense that they are when they're at full health, but figured given the matchup going up against Atlanta, they might be able to overcome some of their deficiencies this week a little bit better, but didn't quite work out that way. So as far as the Chargers go, they need Keenan Allen back. That's my big analysis there. If they struggled like this against Atlanta, I would have some concerns moving forward. I don't know. I feel like they could have game planned Eckler into this more. I was expecting more from him today, really. Also, some deeper targets to the tight end. Everett didn't really have a huge ADOT today, which was kind of surprising to some extent. Now, let's move on to Atlanta. Cordell Patterson was ruled in for the game, and him plus Algier and Huntley, they're all going to be getting in there, is definitely potent. Obviously, expect CPAT to have a little bit more usage going forward, which would mostly, I think, affect Huntley, but I think they like him enough, too, that they'll get him involved. As far as Drake London goes, he had 2 targets in the end zone, so I do apologize to anybody who used him in DFS today or whatnot. It worked out like I expected it to work out. Less, I did expect, a deep play, I typed it wrong there. Now I'm play action shot to deep play action shot. All right, punctuation. So I did expect them to take 1 or 2 play action shots off of that run game to London, and also those 2 targets while they were right there in the end zone. Got the 2 targets, didn't get any deep balls. Well, there was 1 deep ball real late in the game to London. Other than that, Pitts is actually the one that they took the deep balls to at a 5-to-1 rate, I think it was roughly, compared to London. And it's just so weird to me, and I think they've done this all season. They're running Drake London under Pitts and having Pitts go the deeper routes. I don't know if they think they're going to catch somebody off guard with that, even though they do it like all the time. It's just some odd decisions there with that offense that I think are partially to blame for its ineffectiveness. Let's move on to Miami, who beat out in a little shootout, like I kind of predicted there. Against Chicago, 35-32, they beat him. So as far as Miami goes, the big thing there was that Wilson came in this week after getting traded there. He's familiar with the system, so that makes sense as to why he was able to start this game and have some good usage. But mostly, the thing is that he and Mostert split the backfield, so that's obviously going to be concerning for Mostert owners going forward. And I guess Jeff Wilson owners have something, but both of them are probably be pretty risky starts if that's going to be how they're going to run that backfield. Then as far as Chicago goes, Justin Fields really shouldn't have to say more when you look at the fact that he had 4 touchdowns today, 3 of them passing, 1 of them rushing, and that one of those rushing was a big, long rush. And on total, he had 178 rushing yards. So just an insane Justin Fields game. I have my Invisalign in, so sorry. Now, moving on to Cincinnati versus Carolina, and Cincinnati was up 42-0 before half against Carolina. I believe that was all before half. And so a lot of Joe Mixon's 5 touchdowns may have all been before half too, or maybe one was after half. But I am sorry to the individual who came in with like 4 top 8 running backs and asked me which one to sit, and I chose just Joe Mixon. I had him the lowest ranked out of the 4, and yeah, that sucks to miss out on that. 2 of those, Aaron Jones got injured, so that sucks, and Ramondre Stevenson had an okay day, and then just in this last game tonight, you had Ken Walker, I believe, so he did well for you, but Joe Mixon just had an insane game today. Like I said, 5 touchdowns, over 200 all-purpose yards. Insane. And as far as Carolina goes, Baker Mayfield was used in the second half, much more efficient than P.J. Walker. He's a better quarterback than P.J. Walker. So I do expect him to be the quarterback going forward. We will see, though. It's not a guarantee, but something to keep our ears on this week if you're in a 2-quarterback league at the very least. Then on to Detroit versus Green Bay, where Green Bay just couldn't help but get injured and get in their own way, shove their foot in their mouth this game. So Detroit beat them 15-9, and I am sorry to one individual here. So a lot of people had Swift questions this week, rightfully so. Almost everybody I did not suggest to play Swift except for one person, and CPAT was one of the individuals who said to play over him. So him over. And I had him back-to-back in my rankings, both as risky plays, though. So I'm sorry about that if you went with Swift like I had suggested. Just a heads up, saw some reporting that on the sideline, Swift was trying to get in like the whole game. So apparently he feels pretty darn healthy. Just the coaching staff doesn't think he's healthy enough, or whatever the case there. So yeah, something to, I don't know. I wish it was more clear for next week, but I don't know that it will be. Also, as far as Detroit's defense goes, their rookies turned out in this game. If that defense improves, that'll be a big deal. So, and it's possible. They had some high-end rookies come in there. Those are the guys who played good today. That could definitely be some key pieces to helping that defense be much better going forward. So we'll see next week. I would say against probably a better offense than Green Bay. As far as Green Bay goes, there were 7 injuries today in total. I believe maybe there were more. Actually, I don't believe this includes Aaron's hand. So we want to include Aaron's hand. There'd be 8 injuries. And I just wanted to put that note out there to myself because Aaron Rodgers had quite a few turnovers. I don't think they were all to blame on his hand, but just in general, his throwing, he's off a little bit. So I do think that his hand injury is impacting his throwing. So just... for 2 quarterback leagues, at least it's something to keep in mind. This may not only be a head thing or other players on the team thing. There's potentially more to it. And as far as the injuries go, today Christian Watson had a concussion. I think that's his second one this season, right? So that wouldn't be good. And then Romeo Doubs had an ankle injury. Romeo Doubs. Yeah, Doubs. And then Aaron Jones also had an ankle injury, and both of them were in boots after the game. Same with a leading cornerback on the team. Just a mess there in Green Bay. So let's move on to Jacksonville versus Las Vegas, where Jacksonville came back against Las Vegas. Las Vegas came out early and did well, took a 17-point lead on them, went into half, I believe, up maybe 20 or 17 to like 7. But things started to switch before half, and then just over the second half, Jacksonville was able to take the lead from them and win. As far as Jacksonville, they hardly took advantage of what I would say was an advantageous matchup for them. They have a lot of wide receivers that they brought in for Trevor Lawrence, and this was a good wide receiver matchup. I think they should have been able to do better, but I guess sometimes you just have a bad half. So, if they had 2 good halves, it might have looked different. But all in all, also a good sign here for Travis Etienne because the game script was one where a running back could have been game scripted out, yet they stuck with the run. So this coaching staff knows that their quarterback needs that, I'm sure, as part of it. All the better for Etienne as far as you don't have to worry about the matchups too much because the team's going to go for as long as they can with trying to establish the ground game, it appears. And then Evan Ingram had a back injury. I think he went back into the game. However, he didn't do anything once he went back into the game. It's not like it was early on in the game, but it wasn't at the end of the game either. So it's something to keep an eye on this week, just to see if that's going to be an issue, if Evan Ingram is somebody you're relying on. A lot of people picked him up this week, and I'm sure a lot of people will be dropping him after this game. Then as far as Las Vegas goes, they just seem to be struggling to put the pieces together correctly in this offense to be efficient. Either teams take away Davante Adams, and then they just have some other players go off, or Davante Adams does nothing, and or opposite-wise, or Davante Adams goes off and nobody else does much. So they need to find some sort of balance, and they seem to be struggling to figure that out. Up to New England, who dominated Indianapolis 26-3, just kind of built that lead throughout the game, because this looks a lot more impressive than it really was. A defensive touchdown obviously makes that score 19-3, which is still a good victory. But then you also include the fact that four drives ended up in field goals. So they had, what would that be, one offensive touchdown? It just wasn't a great offensive performance. Wanted to point that out because there wasn't much more to point out there. And then as far as Indianapolis goes, Ellinger ain't it. So will not be surprised if whenever Matt Ryan is healthy enough to play again, if they try going back to him, because I don't think this experiment's going to work out very well. He'll probably get one more week for sure, I would think. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. New England might have just dialed up something really tricky against them. Now on to the New York Jets versus Buffalo, and they won. What the heck? So for New York Jets, they won 20-17, by the way. And the New York Jets, all I have to say is wow. Of course, that's not all I have to say. Garrett Wilson has proven that he's definitely going to be usable in the post-Breece Hall era. And this defense is for real. They were able to hold up against Buffalo. They even made Josh Allen say this in the post-game interview. It's tough to win when your quarterback plays like shit. And yeah, oof. It was Josh Allen's fault in this game. It was his passing. He turned the ball over, just didn't look good from all the comments that I saw. I didn't watch this game, so wasn't able to. And also, I don't know that this would have contributed towards that, but Josh Allen was seen holding his elbow after the game, said that it hurts a little, sore, blah, blah, blah. I do believe that it sounds like this is an issue that he has a history of with his UCL joint, I want to say it's called. And so that's something that he's familiar with, which is, I guess, a good thing as far as knowing how to work with it. But he seems to be a little bit banged up. Then on to Minnesota and Washington. And Minnesota was just barely able to beat Washington, kicking a field goal towards the end of the game to pull this one out of their behinds, because the Washington crowd are idiots and they started chanting, "You like that," and setting a fire under this Minnesota offense. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. It doesn't even make, it's not even it's not a diss or anything. Like, he said, "You like that," after getting a really good victory for their team in the past. Like, what? Not even that good crowd. Not that good. So as far as Minnesota goes, TJ Hawkinson went 9 for 9 for 70 in his first game with the team. So, thumbs up there. That was obviously great to see as far as some of the future plans with him and for fantasy owners. And for Washington, I ask you, is Curtis Samuel the most reliable weapon? He might be. He might be for that offense in terms of fantasy. Now let's move on to the Seattle-Arizona game, where Seattle beat Arizona 31-21. This game started out quick and then ended up in a bit of an avalanche towards the end. There was the true division rivalry in the second and third quarters there, where both teams started to stalemate each other. So fantasy points weren't necessarily aplenty, depending on who you own on these teams, but they did get spread around to pretty much everyone at some rate. For Arizona, Rondale Moore, full PPR, did great. Hopkins, at least, especially in like a non-PPR, would be the best there. Didn't have a lot of catches, not a lot of yards, but he did get you a touchdown at least. And Zach Ertz, somewhere in between, more targets than touches, whatever, and yards than DeAndre Hopkins. So, and then a similar story for Seattle. The one dominant factor would have been Walker. Also Noah Fant, if you had him, he went off for the second time against Arizona, and yeah, I already talked about that. All fantasy players, relevant ones, contributed. And as far as Arizona, James Conner appears to be back. So I would expect him to be back to his normal workload last week. If he wasn't already this week, which is pretty much how I projected him, then, yeah, just something to point out about those 8 targets that Ertz racked up throughout this game. That is great. But I really don't think I would expect that going forward. Seattle does do a good job of game planning a number one weapon out for other teams sometimes, especially like Hopkins. In this matchup, and I looked at the schedule. Next week against the Rams might be the most similar team that could like take away Hopkins and force Arizona to play small ball and get the tight end involved more. But other than that, I think he's going to stick to, he's a touchdown reliant guy for the most part. But regardless of what I think, signs are that Ertz goes as he's been going all season. So that's great. Time to check the pulled pork. Almost there. Not quite up to temp yet. So I can finish this up real quick. Tampa Bay beat the Rams 16-13. And here's a little note that I wrote here with, I think, less than a minute left or so. When the Rams decided to run it 3rd and 5, in a situation where if they get a first down, they win the game. They're going up against Tom Brady. I don't care how your defense is done all day. I don't care how Tom Brady's looked all season. You don't give Tom Brady a 2-minute drill because he's going to know how to work your freaking defense, because there are certain things that you have to do as a defense that are going to allow an experienced quarterback who knows what the heck they're doing and can execute, which he still can, to work your defense. And just, you had to have known that he was going to make it to a point where he can throw a touchdown and win the game against you. You have to know that. Like, it's probably going to happen. And he did that. And they won. And the Rams were shocked. Don't know why. How dumb. So, yeah, Tampa Bay won the game. In fanciful fashion, Tom Brady fashion, and Cade Otton had his coming out party. The 1 week where I wasn't so hyped up on Cade Otton, had the chance to highly recommend him to somebody this morning before the game for start sits, and I didn't take it, and I went another route. I think somebody who I've ranked behind him too, like, stick with your rankings, bro. And so he went 5 of 6 for 68 yards, had a touchdown in this game. So just overall, he had a good game. And 6 targets ain't too bad. Still a rookie tight end. And then for the Rams, it's all about Kupp. You know, what else is there for this team? I will say that they did find a good way to get this rushing attack more efficient, really. They to me, it looked like, compared to other times that I've seen the Rams this season, they were a little bit, I guess we'll call it creative with the calls and the types of rushes that they were calling for Henderson. I don't know if I said that sentence correctly. Now let's move on to San Francisco versus the Los Angeles Rams. That's not a game. That's last week, right? Was there another game today? That's it. That's all we got. So, well, that ended unspectacularly. It should have ended great. Oh,